Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, or says. So Elazar ben Azariah was the young man who took over the great Sanhedrin, the great body of Jewish scholars, the biggest yeshiva. He was 18 years old when they handed it to him. And they handed it to him because the guy who had been running it before, Rabban Gamliel, was so strict, was so machmir, like every single person who came in had to be like a saint. He said, if a person's insides don't match their outsides, they can't come and study here. In other words, you had to be perfect through and through. You couldn't have any flaws to come and study. And you'll be shocked to learn that he was down to like a handful of students. And the other sages were like, this is not working. We need to put somebody in charge here who's going to open the gates and get more people in here, because if we don't, this whole operation is going to tank. So they got this kid, Elazar ben Azariah, 18 years old, and they offered him the job. He was freaked out, so he did what any sane young man would do. He went home and he asked his wife, what should I do? And she said, yeah, look at you. I think you're ready. He goes, what do you mean, look at me? You think I'm ready? She said, your hair has turned gray. And his hair had turned white. And she said, do it. So he did. And under his tutelage, he threw the doors open so wide, they had to add, some say 400 benches, but others say 700 benches to accommodate all of the students. To get all of that diversity and all of those many opinions and all those flawed human beings in there to try to learn and to deepen their understanding of what it means to be on a path, what it means to be trying to true the world and make it better. So that's the guy who's talking. I haven't even gotten to what he said yet. Just the guy who's talking. So here's what he says. He says, if there's no Torah, there's no way in the world. In other words, there's no daily life. But if there's no daily life, there is no Torah. If there is no wisdom, there is no awe. But if there's no awe, there is no wisdom. If there is no knowledge, there is no understanding. And if there is no understanding, there is no knowledge. And then here's the kicker. Im ein kemach, ein Torah. Im ein Torah, ein kemach. If there is no flour, like wheat, like food, if there is no food, there is no Torah. And if there is no Torah, there is no food. This is this beautiful way of describing the importance and the interrelated nature of the mundane, the basic, the tachlis, the nuts and bolts of what it means to walk through this world, and the extraordinary, exquisite, elevated, amazing, magical world of Torah, of wisdom, of knowledge, of understanding, of all of these incredibly precise ways of describing being sensitive to the world. It's this combination of the things that we need, like breathing, like eating, and the things that we design, like art and music. The extraordinary and the ordinary need each other. They actually inform each other, and they create this sacred paradox that is the life that we're in. The extraordinary and the ordinary. Some of the extraordinary things are beautiful and inspiring and exquisite and powerful and awesome. And some of the extraordinary things are treacherous and broken and frightening and horrible. And we've had a week of a lot of that kind of extraordinary. And the thing about the extraordinary is that it doesn't play fair. Poor old ordinary sits there and is always available, and it's completely, there for all of us. And we don't think about our breath unless somebody reminds us to think about our breath. And we don't think about our eating unless we can't really eat. But the extraordinary comes along and demands every bit of our attention, every bit of our energy, all of our passion. And I don't think that's fair. I think the ordinary ought to get a good shake also. And I think as much as we can attune ourselves to the extraordinariness of the ordinary, the unbelievable blessing that comes in ordinary, everyday things, the little tiny acts of kindness and compassion and care and love and support that surrounds us, or none of us would be on this Zoom call right now. Every single one of you is a miracle that you're here. It's a miracle. Think of how many things conspired to allow you to be sitting here, taking this in. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of very ordinary little factors that allow us to be in this extraordinary moment with each other. And I beg you, what's the word? Not implore.
Oh, adjure.
I adjure you. I adjure you to notice the ordinary in the extraordinary. And whether it's something terrible, like one person using their power and their rage and hurting another person, or something fantastic and beautiful like an exquisite piece of music, or a cure for a terrible virus that we desperately need. That you train yourselves to understand and honor the extraordinary and the ordinary. I wanted to finish up with a story from that I learned when I was hanging with the Buddhists many years ago. Although I hung out with a different brand of Buddhists, there was a Zen teaching. I wasn't hanging with the Zen folks. They're great, but I just wasn't happening to be hanging with them. But there's a Zen story about a group of disciples of the Buddha who are practicing at the edge of a river. And Zen Buddhists, they're sitting, they're breathing. That's pretty much it. And on the other side of the river was a group of students of a great power master. And they were practicing leaping and jumping and punching and climbing and all of these very dynamic things. And one of them looks over at this bunch of layabouts on the other side of the river and it's like, what are they all about? Like, what kind of master do they have? And one of them goes to the edge of the water and yells across and says, "Hey, can your master do miracles? Because our master can. Our master can draw in the air and a brush stroke will appear on a tablet on the other side of the river." One of the Buddhist kids gets up and very politely bows, thanks the other guy for his question, says, "Oh yes, our master can do miraculous feats. When he wants to go somewhere, he walks. And when he is hungry, he eats. And when he's tired, he lies down and he goes to sleep." I bless you this Shabbat, this extraordinary Shabbat that we're entering into, coming from Mount Sinai, coming from Shavuot and into Shabbat. I bless you to be able to fully integrate the ordinary and the extraordinary, so that you should have a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbat of wholeness, of fullness, and that every part of your heart is activated, not just by the extraordinary, but also by the ordinary. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.